Hi, I'm Michelle, and today I'm going to take you through a series of hip flexor stretches. Now, before we start our hip flexor stretches, it's really important to know where your hip flexor muscles are so that you know what you're actually stretching and why. So our hip flexors are a group of muscles that cross the front of the hip joint. So they cross over this part. And if you have a look at the diagram on the screen at the moment, you can see the group of hip flexor muscles here highlighted. If we take a look at where these muscles actually run, I'll get a little skeleton here to show you. If you're looking at the pelvis, the hip flexor muscles actually start inside the pelvis here. Some of them start at the front of the pelvis, and some of them even start in the lower back. And they cross down here, and this is where the hip would bone, the ball and the socket would go here and down for the leg bone. And they actually cross there. Their action is to lift the leg, so they flex the hip like that. But if they're really tight, they'll also make your pelvis tilt forward. So they'll give you that sway back appearance as well. So you might, if you see people with a large inward curve, that means often their hip flexors are tight too. If these muscles are tight, they can cause you pain in your lower back, they can cause you pain in your hip and your groin, and they can even cause you pain in your knee. So let's take a look at some active and passive stretches to stretch out these muscles really well. So a really nice way to start off your hip flexor stretches is just with a standing active stretch. So you can stand side onto a wall if you need to hold onto something, it's there for you. And just starting by taking the leg forward and swinging it back and through. So this is just a nice active way of stretching out through the front of your hip. Now when you're doing this, you don't want to arch your lower back so far back that you're going to hyperextend there and hurt your low back. Just keep it in a nice comfortable range. If you're finding that your foot's kicking on the ground, you can stand on a step to actually get your standing foot a bit higher, but this is just a really nice way of doing that and allowing the foot to come right back and just stretching through the front of the hip. And obviously you do that both sides, so we'll turn around and do the other side as well. And just swinging forward and back, stretching out both sides, forward and back. And you can do 8 to 10 of these on each side just to start getting warmed up. And active stretches are a really nice way of stretching. Ideally you will have walked for 5 to 10 minutes, or you've had a warm shower or a warm bath so that your body's warm just before you start. And let's stop there. So I'm going to concentrate on my left hip flexor here. You can do the right hip flexor as well. We'll start with the right foot forward and the left foot right back. Now you can be standing close to a wall if you like to. If you don't need to use the wall, that's fine. Just have the wall there if you need to for some balance. So you can see I'm in a nice long lunge here. I'm going to tilt my body down, so I'm actually bending my front knee. So bending the front knee, so I'm actually sinking down with this stretch. And if you're imagining an elastic band from here to here, we're lengthening that elastic band as we sink down. Now, either hold on to the front thigh or the wall and lift up your left hand or left arm. Now this is remember that these muscles attach to the lower back as well. We need to stretch that lower back component as well. So you're stretching out through the front of the hip and tilt away from that side. So you're tilting across to your right. So you're really getting that deep stretch in through the front of the hip and also into the lower back as well, but you'll feel it in through your deep abdominal area. And holding that for maybe 10-15 seconds, and let's release. Now, you can repeat that again on the other side. Otherwise, you can make this a little bit more challenging, and we're going to move down to the ground now. Similar stretch, but a little bit more of a progression. So coming down, if your knee's sore, you can just pop a cushion or a rolled up towel underneath your knee. Now take the right foot out a little bit further in front, and again, sink down. So you're sinking down and forward. You're not hyperextending back with this stretch. You're leaning forward and tilting down. Again, raise the left hand up high, left arm up high. Stretch up and then stretch across and away from that side. So again, I'm experiencing a really nice stretch through the front of my hip and holding it there, not bouncing the stretch. Again, so just keeping it holding and relaxing the breath as you do so. And coming up, and then you can repeat that stretch again on the other side if you choose to. Now, let's come down onto the ground to finish these stretches. And in this position, if you've got to sway back, it'll be more comfortable for your back if you use a cushion or a pillow underneath your hips. So coming right down into this position here, this is called a heel prop. So this is an active way of stretching through your front of your hip. Your head comes down, the foot comes up, and as if you're going to be lifting that foot straight up to the ceiling. Imagine you've got a glass of water or something on that foot. And basically you lift up, so you're squeezing the buttock muscles, lifting up, and this is the way you actively stretch out through the front of that hip, and then lower it down. And then repeat that again, lifting up and lowering it down. And obviously you're taking it far enough through there to experience that stretch. And you can see my hip flexors are fairly flexible, so I can get that knee fairly high off the ground. And it's just a good measure of how tight the hip flexors are to how high you can actually lift that leg off the ground and down. And you can do up to 10 reps with this little exercise as well. Again, stretching through the front of the hip and taking it down, and you can repeat on the other side. Once you've done those, I like to come up onto all fours and just sink back into child's pose stretch, just because you've done that hyperextension, the extension of the lower back, and just to make the lower back feel a little bit more comfortable with that reverse stretch. Okay, and coming up out of that position. So you can see we've run through a nice little routine of hip flexor stretches there. How many do you need to do? As many as you like to do. If you're someone who's in a sitting job, you might need to stretch out your hip flexor stretches more readily. Or if you're an athlete, obviously wanting increasing your stride length, you'll be doing those stretches more regularly. And you can do as many as you like of those, particularly when the body's warm. So thank you for watching today. I really hope you enjoy and benefit from those hip flexor stretches. I'll see you next time. Bye for now.